Oh hey again. As you hopefully remember, I'm Gareth. You might remember such classics as Police Use of Force and other stuff. Today we're here to talk about the case of R. vs. Stone, a case where a man murdered his wife and claimed automatism as a defense. Now before we take a look at that reenactment, we are first going to state the facts of the case.
The newly wedded Mr. Stone and his spouse were driving to visit his two sons from a previous marriage. During this, the two entered a severe argument which caused Stone to enter what he said was a state of automatism. He claimed that a whooshing sensation and ended up stabbing his spouse 47 times. He then stuffed her into a toolbox because he didn't want any wild animals to get at her. After that, Stone drove back to Winfield, picked up some clothes, sold a car, and conducted some other business. He then wrote his stepdaughter a note and then flew off to Mexico. His deceased wife's body was found about 3 days later. After about 6 weeks, Stone stated he had a dream about stabbing his wife 2 times, and then he headed back home where he turned himself into the police.
Now that you understand the facts of the case, here's a dramatic reenactment of the incident. Be warned. The following reenactment contains mature subject matter and violence. This means make sure the kids are out of the room, Kieran.
Oh my god, you're such a loser.
Hey,
Where
don't
are you
hit
going
me.
right now? You spent so much money on clothes.
Do you see what I'm wearing? Look at these old clothes.
You just got married.
Yeah,
what are you
so?
doing? You just didn't need to limit yourself out. I'm always so lonely here.
But I want to see my
You're
kids.
such a loser.
Hey, stop
You're
doing
such a
that.
loser. Stop
Hey.
spending so much money.
Hey,
I don't know what to do with you anymore. I just don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated with you. Just go.
here, we'll call.
Okay, fine. Just let me out. I just want to go home.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad yourself?
Hey, good. I'm Bert Stone.
I'm unnamed witness. How's it going?
So here you're looking at my pony here, yeah?
Yeah, I saw the ad and I just want to get on them as soon as possible.
Yeah, you know, all the high school kids are driving them these days. It's a really good car.
I can see that. Why are you selling it?
You know, I gotta go somewhere.
Oh, okay. Cash okay? Because I can buy it right here.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the money right here.
Oh, that's more than enough.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you very much.
No
Yeah.
problem. Thank you.
Good luck with it. I'm sorry, Nicole, but she just wouldn't stop yelling at me. My loan to the bank, credit union, has insurance on it if I die. Definitely need that.
Hola, señor.
Hey, Holmes.
Cerveza, por favor.
See.
Oui, oui.
Man, I love Mexico.
Pretty horrific stuff. Now, some of you may not understand what automatism is. That's probably because Kieran hasn't taught it yet. But thanks to the illustrious community college known as Camosun, we are able to explain it to you.
Automatism is defined as a state of impaired consciousness in which an individual, though capable of action, has no voluntary control over that action. According to the Simon Verdon Jones, there are 5 types of automatism. Those 5 are automatism caused by such normal conditions as sleepwalking or hypnosis, automatism triggered by an external trauma such as a blow to the head, automatism that is involuntary induced by alcohol or other drugs, automatism that is voluntary, self-induced by the use of alcohol or other drugs, and finally, automatism caused by a mental disorder, also known as disease of the mind. In the Stone case, the defendant pleaded insane automatism, non-insane automatism, and provocation. Provocation and non-insane automatism were quickly dismissed because there was no external blow to make non-insane automatism a valid excuse. As for provocation, Stone stabbing his wife 47 times was deemed overkill. No pun intended.
Automatism is a form of mental disorder which is determined to be temporary, where a person cannot control their actions or remember them occurring after the fact. This was decided in the R versus Raby case. However, Raby himself was found not to have had insane automatism, but rather a permanent form of insanity. From this case, they used the judge's definition of insane automatism, which did apply to Stone in his case. Therefore, the judge stated it was likely that automatism may have occurred in this instance.
Alright, now that you understand what automatism is, here's a reenactment of how the Court of Appeal went. The least, for a person without some disease of the mind to react so violently to verbal attack. There may have well be cases, which will be few instead, where prolonged criticism or insults may cause an otherwise healthy mind to lose all control. But most persons endure or separate themselves from the source of such misfortune. Sudden violent reactions to recent stimuli, however, are more properly ascribed to a personality type disorder of the mind. In fact, there was other expert evidence that the appellant did not suffer from any disease of the mind, either from internal or external causes, but rather he failed to control his temper in the heat of a verbal assault to which he was subjected to. Secondly, there were discrepancies in the evidence of the appellant regarding the recovery of his memory. There is no doubt he realized what he had done when he saw the knife in his hand and the body of the deceased. The note written to the stepdaughter and his conduct in liquidating some assets and his flight to Mexico indicate that he had a realization of what he had done. There were also differences in the evidence of the appellant regarding when, with relation to the whooshing sensation he described, and the delivery of the first blow. All these matters raised real questions about his loss of or recovery of his memory. Lastly, it cannot be assumed that the trial judge was unaware of the policy questions this defense raises, particularly the risk of reoccurrence as one basis of classifying abnormal behavior as insanity rather than non-insane automatism. While there was no evidence of a tendency towards violence or a reoccurrence in this case, a sudden violent response to abuse certainly raises a concern about the danger threshold of this appellant. I have not overlooked what the trial judge said on this question in his reasons for sentence. In this area, the risk of reoccurrence must be viewed in a larger context. Based on everything that you've provided me in evidence-wise, and the fact that automatism can be easily feigned, I am forced to deny your appeal. In case you had trouble following what the Honorable Judge was saying, here's an abstract of what the judge's decision actually was.
The court ruled that Mr. Stone's story lacked an air of reality. Air of reality is a test to see whether or not the evidence to support the defense's claim is of reasonable doubt. The reason the judge found Stone's story lacking air of reality was due to the fact that Stone claimed he didn't remember anything but was able to write a note to his stepdaughter about the incident, sell his car, and conduct business. His reasoning as to why he hid the body seemed unrealistic as well. Also, how the facts were described seemed to appear more of a cover-up. Lastly, Stone later admitted that he recalled the first two stabbings, which further reduced his air of reality in regards to automatism. Therefore, the court dismissed the appeal. The case then went on to the Supreme Court of Canada, where it was also later dismissed. This decision will likely influence judges who need to use an air of reality when discussing automatism.
After looking at the Stone case, we can see how complicated automatism actually is. Considering it is the defense's job to prove it, Stone did a good job providing evidence to his statement. Unfortunately for him, the air of reality was not great enough to explain his actions after the fact. This made the story too unbelievable and led him to having his appeal dismissed. So now that you understand what automatism is, there's really no need to show up at Kieran's class. So you guys are welcome. Doing good?